Hello and welcome to the Untrended Podcast, where we lift the lid on extraordinary ideas about business and culture. I'm Nicole Jones, and with me are Billy Hamilton-Stent, Chief Strategy Officer, Louise Brooks, Senior Copywriter, and Aditi Kulkarni, Creative Art Worker. Once upon a time, the ad industry had a legendary reputation for its drinking culture. Cue images of Don Draper, old-fashioned in hand, solving creative crises between swigs. But in an era where marketing is all about data, strategy, and precision, does the hangover have any creative currency left? What role does alcohol play in modern agency cultures, as more people than ever embrace a sober, curious lifestyle? And most importantly, what is the ideal fuel for a great idea? By the end of this episode, we'll hopefully land on the winning formula for creative brilliance, and probably argue about whether there's any reason to embrace a sore head in the name of a great idea. But first, to get us warmed up, it's time for Trend or Trash. We'll throw out some of the latest cultural trends relating to today's chat, and our guests will decide if they're the real deal or total garbage. Let's dive in.
So guys, companies are swapping pub crawls for Tough Mudders. What do we think?
Right, I've got a very serious issue with the idea of doing a Tough Mudder with colleagues, because when I did a Tough Mudder with my husband, quite a large part of it involved him kind of getting under my bum and shoving me over a wall. And with the greatest of respect to all of you, I don't want to get under any of your bums and do pushing. I think that would be crossing a line that would be inappropriate.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to do that with even you.
No, I mean, we're
close. Very well.
We're good friends, but...
Yeah. I mean, I have never done a Tough Mudder, but I think doing some sort of like activity outside of work together, like, you know, for instance, me and Billy, we don't really work together in day to day, but like if we were to go outside and, I don't know, play tennis, that would be something.
We do get the train together now and again.
We do get the train together, yeah. But we don't do any sport activity together, but maybe we should start running up and down the train carriage.
I like the idea of doing things that aren't drinking. I think that's really, you know, putting aside the touching of bums. I like the idea of doing competitive, games-based activities, but I think we should be going towards escape rooms.
I agree.
I've wanted to do an escape room for so long.
Maybe we should do that for our next creative team.
This has to be the first generation in history, right, where the youngest generation in the workforce aren't really the ones leading the charge on drinking.
I think it's more of a friends thing to do on like a weekend, because me and my friends, we still do pub crawls, but we're also like, for me, in the back of my head, I'm also thinking, I need to know where I am because I need to catch a train. Like I can't get absolutely drunk because I'm not going to get home. So it's like we kind of let loose a little bit, but at the same time, we still have like a plan of action.
But is that not more of a thing of, in your generation, it's so expensive. I mean, this is a bit London-centric, but it's so hard to like afford to live in London. So when I was your age, I lived in London, and so I wasn't worried about that sort of thing because I could just get the tube or like
and eventually find your way home.
Yeah. So it was less of a thing, whereas I guess for you guys, a lot of you still live at home with your parents because it's so too expensive. So
to take it back to a place of trend or trash on doing Tough Mudders, we're no to Tough Mudder. We're generally pro-ish doing other activities that are sporty or active.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. So
trend.
So next, plants, not pubs. Companies are reallocating budget increasingly towards office design instead of work socials. What do we think?
Well, if you look around our office, it sounds like we're not having a Christmas party this year because we've gone absolutely nuts on the plants.
Bonkers on the plants.
I think it's plants as a service where we kind of are actively paying people to come in and take care of them.
They come and potter around and water them all.
I like plants in the office.
Yeah, I think they're good. I think the office workspace is becoming increasingly important because, you know, not to play the lockdown card, but coming back into the office is still, I think, something that companies are like wrestling with. You hear it reading in the papers all the time, right? I think WPP have just gone to 4 days a week. Yeah, and all the big hyperscalers have done it. We sit at a comfortable 3, you know, which I think works well. But, you know, for some people that's a trip like over the road, and for others it's like a 2-hour train ride. So I think I think we've always invested money in like making sure the office is a good place to come to. Feels like, you know, relaxed,
I
homely.
think the office space is obviously really important, but it's definitely not more important than going to the pub, I think.
Ooh, okay.
Are you saying that carbon dioxide and the atmosphere are less important than...
Yes,
I absolutely am.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking back to a job I had a while ago that had a beautiful workspace that was full of plants, way more than this. And we also had the little people that would come every few days and water them all. I even maybe stole a couple of them to take them home.
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
Yeah.
But basically that job was mega toxic. It was a horrible place to work. The management was really unpleasant. And when I think back to that job, I don't think, oh, but the office was so beautiful.
Yeah.
What a great experience.
That's
I think
a good point,
what a
right?
horrible
Probably
workplace.
quite a strong correlation, I think.
Yeah, I am very guarded about the overly stylized office. You can, you know, something doesn't quite pass the sniff test when it feels like you're on a film set, does it? It's like...
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's that thing of,
point.
in terms of, obviously, having a nice office is great, but in terms of this question around like plants, not pubs, I think pubs, definitely pubs.
Definitely
in terms
pubs.
of like building like culture and bonding.
I really strongly believe that on this whole point around the poor lads in Gen Z, they're all out of money and it's really hard for them to actually get the cash together to go out drinking. I think that companies can do a lot to plug that gap. If you just let them loose on the bar, then I think they'll be more inclined to stay out later, be part of office culture.
Or just get them a cactus.
Or a cactus, yeah. I mean, Aditi, you know, as our representative Gen Z.
I have absolutely zero green fingers.
Okay, so in the battle of plants versus pub, Aditi, I feel like you're very clearly trend.
100% trend.
Definitely trash.
Absolute trash. Give me the drinks.
I agree. Trash.
Oh.
Let's move on to the main topic of today's episode, the role of hangovers and booze more generally in creativity and agency life.
So, have any of you ever actually experienced like a moment of really fantastic inspiration whilst hungover? Or more broadly, have you ever had a really good day at work the morning after the night before?
No.
Absolutely not. Never.
No, I mean, I've seen you on a hangover.
It's a bad time.
Respectfully, Louise, you're not your best self.
I get really bad hangovers, and I always have. I think at our age, which is early 30s, there's a lot of chat of, hangovers are starting to get really bad now. They're like 2 days, 3 days even. But for me, that's kind of always been the case. So I'm like, I was already there. They're just really bad. So yeah, the idea of doing any kind of work, and I think because of what we do, we're copywriters, and for the designers, I'm sure as well, because you have to have a tangible output. You have to do a thing. It's not like you can't just send a few emails and sort of pretend. Like you actually have to produce a piece of work by the end of the day. And let's be honest, the quality of that work is not going to be great.
However, I would say that there's that kind of, like the day after the office party when people are in, or when we do a client party, if there is some sort of shared suffering,
Absolutely,
that seems to have a sort of a benefit. There's what would that benefit be? There's a sort of camaraderie in that.
Well, you all feel rubbish at the same time, so you can kind of share that.
We had a pitch after the Christmas party this year, and I was uncontrollably shaking.
Oh my God, you were not good.
Not because I was nervous. I don't really get nervous for pitches, but just because I think I was going through like really severe alcohol withdrawal at kind of about 20 minutes before. But I balanced that out with a very late afternoon coffee, and I think the pitch went fairly well.
You did a grand job. I mean, that was no small pitch either. You know, so.
But I'd be interested to hear, on that note of pitching, Billy, as somebody who very much has, many years behind you, no offence,
and many in front.
We'll see. In the old world of coming to the office 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Have you ever done like a pitch or a presentation still kind of drunk?
Not a pitch. I remember a evening where we were lucky enough to win an award at an event that we didn't think we were going to win. And if you win an award, I guess it's a bit like the Oscars, but at a much lower level. There's a sufficient release of kind of biochemical joy that everyone decides that it's a really great idea to get drunk. And the logistics of that are that you might not find out till about 10 o'clock that you've won. So you're pushing on into the small hours. Then I had to present at an event that we were hosting. I had to present some data and research, which I think was supported by maybe 90 to maybe 95 minutes sleep. That was a tough gig.
Yeah.
That sounds rough.
Very memorable. And I think in the spirit of celebration, that's a good thing. I think if you're, everyone will forgive the fact that people are having a good time for having a good time, but never a pitch. I couldn't handle that.
There's a copywriter in our team who says that everything in life should be done, what is it? It's either for the plot or for...
I can't remember.
So it's either for a good, like to make a good memory or to have a good story. And as much as I don't like coming into work the day after I've been drinking, I do quite regularly tell the story of the time that I had to get off the train at Bank and just throw up on the platform and then get back on the train.
Oh, that was you, was it?
No, this was pre-COVID, so this was really, you do have to come to the office. And I ended up getting to the office and then having to book in the rest of the day off as annual leave because I was like, I actually physically.
Why couldn't you do sick leave? Was
Because
that just?
I'd been to Cheltenham Festival the day before, so I couldn't really be like, I've actually picked up a bit of lurgy at the races.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
was how it was back
good
then.
stories, good friends. I've definitely made a lot of my.
Are you a bit more relaxed when you're hungover? Is there a sort of you sort of surrender to the higher powers of health?
Well, I guess this is really the question. Like,
Maybe.
why do we romanticize, specifically in advertising and creative, this idea of hangovers and drinking and creativity? Because even when I'm drunk, I don't think I'm having great ideas. I mean,
I think it's that whole thing of suffering for your art. And I think Adland likes to really play that up because we like to feel really important in what we're doing. And that what we're doing is really art in a way. And so I think it's that.
You've got your whole kind of Toulouse-Lautrec,
turn of the century.
Yeah, artistic folk who were also hammered the whole time. But I don't know if that's just because the water was a bit iffy. There's that sort of...
But I feel like it's still, creative agencies are also still seen as like a looser space. Like, we're fun people. We always have a good time. So I feel like that drinking culture is automatically part of office life. And I think it's that belief of like, if you're a little bit drunk, you might think differently because you're not
on it.
Basically, like you don't have that 100% rationality. You're just Yeah,
what's that saying? Write drunk and edit sober.
Yeah,
but
it's always like attributed to
nice one.
Hemingway, but I'm not really sure that he
I'm
ever
not
said
sure.
that in the same way.
But I guess then being drunk is one thing, but being hungover, I'm not sure writing.
So,
hungover
I mean, has
is ever
anyone
good.
ever had an experience of being in a state of lowered inhibitions and coming up with something really good? Because I once, whilst not sober, came up with an idea for a book and then realised the next day that the idea for the book was just Game of Thrones, which is already a thing. So I kind of looked at it and I was like,
so
oh,
close.
crap. Yeah.
I am this isn't about being drunk, but I often have ideas at what I call the 3 a.m. press conference where something has disturbed me at night and I'm awake. I've had sufficient rest that I'm quite alert and then the wheels start turning. Almost every time I've had an idea at that time in the morning and woken up wanting to share it with people, it's been absolute crap. Yeah. So I've never pushed through to like the mot juste or the
Did I tell you that
moment.
I had a dream last year where you gave me an idea?
Did I? What was the
Yeah,
idea?
so
again?
we
Was it
actually ended up
shareable?
using it. It was for the pitch, but we ended up doing about talking about music and harmony. And you said the word counterpoint to me in a dream, and then that evolved to become an idea about harmonics.
So whilst I haven't come up with an idea,
That's like
I have
Inception.
been in a dream where I've come up with an idea.
Yeah.
I think they call that meta, don't they? That's like meta.
Either that, or you hanging around in my house at 2 a.m.
I think
I'm
that's
gonna
sad.
go. Made a
That's sad.
contribution.
Yeah.
That's sad that Billy is still coming up with the ideas in your dreams,
think
even though
it's
it was
a
you
celebration.
actually coming up with the idea,
Yeah.
but in the form of
I should
Billy.
give myself more credit.
You should, yeah.
Maybe Billy's
absolutely.
like my kind of inner creative voice.
Maybe.
Is my
Is
my
that
mentor.
getting drunk and being creative thing slightly dated as well now? Is it like, don't we do like, tiny bits of shrooms or just sit and reflect on a mountain now and stuff?
There's quite a lot of drinks, aren't there, that are tiny bits of shrooms or tiny bits of CBD, and it's
Yeah,
meant to
It does
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
things are
Yeah.
moving that way, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
They don't
Yeah.
taste good though. They taste a bit sad and they just taste like sparkling water. So
Not as nice as a lovely Chardonnay.
Exactly.
or
I just
something.
think if you're going to get drunk, just get drunk the normal way. There's no point of these fancy, tins. Just
There's
have a
also
pint.
the difference between the idea and the technical execution of anything that looks like an
Yeah.
idea, right? So if you're a designer and you've got to start doing some design stuff, hangovers or being drunk aren't going to help, are they?
No.
Okay, so we've sort of established that the work is probably not going to stand to benefit from drinking in any meaningful way. But what I think is probably more important about agencies and alcohol is the culture aspect. It's the socializing, it's the making friends. So where do you stand on that in this kind of modern day where we want to do inclusive socializing, we want to make sure that everyone is kind of coming together, not necessarily only through drink, but it does still kind of play an important part of it, do you think?
I think so. I think it's tricky. I don't think it necessarily has to be one or the other. Like, can we not have a world where we go to the pub, but then we also do some of those events, like the escape room, for example? I think the thing is the maybe slight issue with those kinds of events is it requires like a level of commitment. You have to it's a lot of organisation, and people have to be like, right, we're going to be there at a time and a date. Whereas going to the pub is very low commitment. You can go and just be like, I'll just have one. Obviously, that inevitably
It's never
will turn
one.
into like 3 or 4.
Yeah, you
but
can't just pop out for a tough mudder, can you?
no, and I think in terms of like different personality types as well, there are people who are more outgoing and extroverted who love the pub, and there are people, I mean, we all know people on our team maybe that are a bit more introverted, and they can just come to the pub and have like a nice chat and a quiet drink and then slink off when they want, and they're more likely to do that than to do the escape room because it's too much pressure having that kind of longer event.
I found out today, and so I'm keen to know from DT, because she is the same age as our agency.
Wow.
So 2 wonderful things happened in 2001.
Yes, they did.
One was you were born.
Yes.
And the second was this was born.
Wow.
But I think there's a big generational difference in drinking. I know everyone likes to drink, but I'd be interested in what you think about the pub.
I think it's definitely changed a lot in sort of my teenage years, and I think COVID definitely played a big part of it because I started university in September 2019 and I lived out for the first 6 months, and I remember just having the best time of my life. I was like, this is it. I'm 18, I'm going out, and I went to university in London, so it was like I was right in central London, going to all of these like bars and clubs, and I truly felt like life cannot be any better. And I think everyone was in the same boat at that time. All of my friends, we were always like, we all knew that we were going to go out Friday evening and Saturday evening, and it was like, this wasn't planned, it was just something that you were going to do because that is what every university student did. And then COVID hit and we were all home, and initially it was like, oh, it'll be 3 months of your time, we'll be back out in no time. And then I think it's the thought slowly creeped in that actually this is happening for a lot longer than we anticipated. And then it got to this point where I don't want to say we all became grandmas, but it just sort of was like...
But you did.
We did. We did. Because now I'm thinking, do I really want to go out on a Friday night when I can just stay at home, have a takeaway, have a glass of wine and be in bed by 10:30? Because I want to be in bed by 10:30.
But that's fine.
That's
okay.
But I also feel like...
That sounded slightly patronising.
I want to reassure you. I want to reassure you that
But
you're
you know,
okay.
all those stories of like, you know, going out, and some people have made so many fantastic memories, or like friends on these nights out.
Yeah, you would doubt it really
I get
shit.
this is the question, but I really, not to be too pointed, but how do we feel about, so having agency relationships are very important, and I mean, you know, platonic relationships. I think having good friends with the people that you work with, or having good friendships with the people you work with, is so important because it allows you to get through the inherent kind of graft of it all. Like, it's stressful, sometimes we have, you know, ructions, but ultimately going for a drink at the end of the day or having a glass of wine at the end of it all brings us all back together. Do you feel like you have made really good friends for life at work, given how much the kind of socializing aspect has declined? Or, I mean, you've not been here for a year yet, so.
But I still feel like there are people that I don't think we're in this age where it's like, oh, you're my colleague, so we're going to keep it at that sort of point. Like we talk about everything. Like there's been so many times at the table we've just started talking about work and then just slipped off topic to, you know, talking about something on social media. And I think it's very important to have that relationship because we spend so much of our time together in the week that I personally wouldn't like it if we were quite reserved with each other, because we all sort of want the same thing. We're all working for the same company, and like advertising at the end of the day, we're not, you know, out there on the front line, but at the same time we're all working.
We're out there on the front line of advertising now. I mean, that's
I mean, you know,
we're in the trenches
if an ad was to fail.
B2B.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tough war.
Yeah, I mean, what's your observation, Billy, in terms of the relationships? You've obviously watched people come and go for years in this company, and the friendships that are forged. You know, I think there's been pub pro marriages, there are pub pro children.
Would they have
progeny. Happened without those? Would those babies have been born?
Would that progeny have happened? I think that you definitely see in the agency kind of life cycle, there are gangs that form over time and they become really tight, and then you notice now, just because you know some of them, all of them move on eventually. But they're still buddies in their extended networks. And that's a really cool part of agency culture. You know that those things were founded not because of the agency, but because of that moment in time for those people. I mean, our agency, you know, me and Pete and John are like, you know, bezies, and that's for decades. Yeah. So that's cool. Drinking plays less of a part now. The agency, you know, a lot of agencies I don't think we have a drinking culture, a heavy drinking culture in this agency. The agency where I was at, it was much more about every night people would go down the pub before they went home. It was just a standard thing to do, you know. And then you were going back to like literally the last century, but that is maybe the very back end of it. But you know, that's what happened. I think and this is the important part of this question, I think it's changing. So, and I think the smart thing is you've got to be sensitive to that. Yeah. You know, I think the idea of, I'm mindful of company cultures, when you're coming into them, especially if you're straight out of uni or you've not got a lot of work under your belt, they can be quite powerful things. You know, you sort of, there's, you know, peers and there's people who might become mentors or whatever around, and you're trying to find your feet, etc. And I think you can get dragged into company cultures. I think what's happening now is we're all a bit more considerate about some of these things. Like, you know, it's not just about some kind of big social crazy drive to have fun. I think basically young people are just a lot more grown up than we were. I think that's basically maybe the internet's done something that wasn't there before.
Okay, so what if we moved away from drinking? What should we be doing after work instead to make sure that people are still having those bonds? Because, you know, I'm someone who, I would say some of my best friends probably for life I've met at this agency. I mean, it kind of helped that I got here when I was in my mid-20s and have stayed here ever since. But what sort of activities should we be doing instead of going to the pub and getting bladdered?
Well, I think we've kind of touched on a few already, the kind of more inclusive activities that are less like reliant on people being sporty or athletic. I mean, I think it's just trying to cater for everyone. And I think, for example, we did an activity not that long ago where we did a bit of drawing.
That was really good.
That was really nice.
Yeah.
So those kinds of events. My sister sometimes organises like events for her team at work, and they do like those ones where you go and do like a crafty thing. So they'll like do like some lino printing or some watercolour painting or something.
Not just things that are like a bit crafty. Okay.
No, the arty sort of definition.
Craft.
Yeah. And I think the thing with those classes, you don't have to be really naturally good at art to do it, because it's like tutored. It's like they're telling you what to do. And so that's quite a nice thing. And then you're kind of bonding because you're like, oh, look how rubbish mine is, or oh, you've done this, that's quite a nice way of doing it.
There's an interesting dimension as well in terms of workplace socialising, that if you all follow each other on Instagram, you then have that additional layer of you have insight into people's lives that kind of crosses the bridge of, you know, Aditi's just been on a lovely little holiday to India, and I really love looking at all of the pictures and kind of feel very involved in her life in a way that I'm probably actually not. It's just
but then isn't that the nub of it? Is actually it's just finding any way. It could literally be anything, couldn't it, to kind of strengthen those interpersonal relationships.
Are we saying that social media is a surrogate for the pub now? We're just not aware of it.
Yeah. God.
Or it's helping.
That's going to make dry January loads easier.
Yeah.
You know, when I came into the office on Wednesday, people just were like, oh, how was your holiday? Or like when someone else comes back from holiday, because you've seen that little like glimpse into their life, you can be like, oh, that, you know, that food looked stunning, or that place looked amazing. It just, you naturally have that conversation rather than just being like, how was your weekend? And just having that sort of dull conversation.
I think we need to come back to DT in 3 years when there's a few more air miles to see if that pub's just working its way in. And if not, then I think we're onto a bona fide trend here.
Yeah, I've been in a big place of pub for the last year because I was sort of thinking distantly about having a family at some point. And so basically 4 times a week for the last year, I thought, well, I might have a baby soon, so I better go to the pub, which has been financially and health kind of ruinous, I would say.
Wasn't your wedding reception in a boozer?
My wedding reception was in a pub in London.
An homage.
And 4 of my colleagues were given the honour of setting off confetti cannons at the wedding. And you know, they were all colleagues that I've spent a lot of time drinking with.
I was born in a pub.
Born in a pub?
Yeah, Queen Victoria in Ealing, in Broadway.
There you go.
So, was that intentional?
It wasn't that my mum and dad were just, popping out for a pint. They were publicans.
Right.
So, I mean, technically I was born in a hospital, but, you know, I was very shortly then
raised in a pub. You've got that air about you.
You started off really
giving
sort of...
pub.
My mum and dad were called Pat and Roy, and they had a pub called the Queen Vic. Yeah,
that's amazing.
That's literally as EastEnders as you'll get, ironically, in the West End of London. Yeah.
Okay, so we've sort of established that booze is important for culture. It's not that important for having great ideas and doing good work. With that in mind, I would like to hear from everyone. What are your ideal conditions for actually doing really good work, having really good ideas? What's the kind of prime setup that you need in order to do a good job, presuming that it's not a hangover? Billy?
I am a big fan of looking outside of your standard points of reference, you know, but anything that's different. Do something doesn't have to be, you know, stereotypically cool or creative, but I think creativity is about having a breadth of reference and being able to pull on that stuff. Otherwise, you're always in the same swim lane. So I like to do somewhat different things, whatever they might be for the individual. That's where I get my gubbins from.
I like that. Louise?
I was listening to a podcast the other day where 2 comedians were discussing how they come up with their light bulb ideas. And one of them referenced a study where they took 3 groups of people. One of them were told to meditate. One of them were told to build things out of Lego. And the third one were also given Lego, but told to sort the colours out.
I would love that.
Wow. So they did that for a bit. And then the next task for all of them was they were given a brick and they were said, right, now you've got like 3 minutes to come up with as many creative ideas as possible about this brick. So build a house, throw it through a window, and anything like that. And they then measured who kind of came up with that, which group did perform the best in that activity. And it was the ones that sorted the Lego into colours. And basically it's around like if you do like a menial task that kind of clears your brain before you attempt to do something creative, that will kind of positively impact your results. And I listened to that and I actually really related to that because I think I'm sort of doing that already without kind of consciously being aware of it. So if I have like a bit of work to do where I'm really going to have to use my brain, I will spend ages like doing lots of organising and like laying out, I don't know if you do this, but layering out the doc and being like, right, let's put all the bits and bobs in. It's such a menial task to do. And then I feel like ready to kind of jump in.
That's really
Our
interesting.
creative directors were kind of gently laughing at me the other day because I lay out my free-thinking creative ideas in a very structured, organised way. I like to have all of the little frames and kind of be like, here's where my big idea is going to go and here's where my narrative is going to go, and make it very neat and tidy before I get stuck into it.
Well, that's your way of like clearing the cobwebs.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever had a really great idea inside my own house. That's the crucial thing. I need to be
Out and
I
about.
think I
Out
have,
and
but
about.
more like, you know, when you move, and I'm very lucky I have more than one place I can sit where I live. But I think even just
the
like,
bar is on the floor.
the bar is on the floor, but like, you know, I obviously normally sit at my desk, but if I maybe move to the sofa or even to like the dining table, it like the slight change of environment can kind of make you think slightly differently, and that
I think
can help.
Nietzsche said something about that. All good ideas only happen when you're outside. Yeah.
You need inputs. You can't.
And then he came up with the idea that God is dead. So, you know,
Wow.
big stuff. Yeah. Downer.
Not sure where to go from there.
no idea.
Thanks, Billy.
We'll edit that.
And time now for our final segment, Mailbag. You know the score. We'll pull out a question from the mystery bag and our panel will give us their thoughts. Let's dive straight in.
Brand is the big buzzword in B2B at the moment. What B2B brand stood out most memorably for you over the last year and why? Aditi.
I think purely from thinking like a designer and aesthetically, I have seen a lot of MailChimp ads recently, and I just think they are so good because it's like a vibrant colour. It's not that sort of, I feel like a lot of brands have been going into blue recently, whereas MailChimp's quite yellow, and it's got like these really fun illustrations, and I think it stands out and I remember it. So I think they're doing a really good job with their branding.
I'm interested, Billy, because you've been doing a lot of work over the last year about brand in B2B. If we're sort of talking about, you know, brands that we remember, what are the components or ingredients of memorable B2B brands?
Distinction. It's the perennial thing that brands in B2B wrestle with. They want to stand out. They don't want to stand out too much because it feels weird.
Louise, what about you?
Well,
Have
I
you
think
got a memorable one?
A brand that is standing out for me anyway is teamwork.com, which is your sort of standard, well, I don't know if it's standard, but project management softwares. We have project management software clients as well. But what they do that's really different for B2B is they really lean into the sort of chaos of the client. And so their whole thing is like talking about how difficult clients are, which, you know, I'm not going to comment on, but everything they do is very tongue-in-cheek. It's actually funny, like genuinely funny. They did this whole ad that was almost like a scene from a film with like a Bond villain with the client like turning around in a chair and he's like saying things, and it's something so relatable, not just to agencies but anyone who works with clients, which is most companies, isn't it? And I think so many companies are really scared to lean into that humour and like really go for it, and they just absolutely have, and it's worked really well.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? You talk so much about like humour in B2B and how you can do it, but you've put your finger on it there. It's as long as it is that relatable thing, as long as it's that moment of recognition of like, of God, yeah, I know that moment, or I know how that feels, and that's actually a really good space to play in because that's going to stick in your head.
Absolutely, yeah.
That wraps up another episode of the Untrended Podcast. We've pulled apart the myth of hangover creativity, explored how shifting away from traditional agency drinking cultures is reshaping team dynamics, and examined what really fuels our best ideas. Hopefully we've given you some food for thought. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe or follow wherever you're listening so you won't miss out on our upcoming episodes, where we'll keep unpacking extraordinary ideas about business and culture. Got questions or ideas for us to explore? We'd love to hear from you. Just use the link in the description of this episode to send them our way. Thanks for tuning in to the Untrended Podcast. See you next time.